pod bay doors, please, Hal.
The pod bay doors are slightly open on our mini episode. Welcome. I am Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and also overthinkingoscars.wordpress.com. Here with my very saddened co-host, Mr. Doug Heller of TalkMovieToMe.com. How the heck are you today, sir?
Hawump babaloo bop balump bamboo. Woo!
Yeah, more proof that nobody else can do that.
Exactly. It's Little Richard was one of my first. I've loved him since I was a kid.
And as complicated as any human being, public figure could ever be.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, you know, I love what the guy on, forgive me for forgetting his name, but the critic on Ebert.com that wrote his memorial said he was not the pioneer of rock and roll.
No.
He was the architect.
Yes.
And everything he built in the early days of rock and roll came from his life.
Mm-hmm.
Came from what he accumulated early in his life. And from black Southern gospel, the roots of blues,
mm-hmm.
rhythm and blues,
mm-hmm.
and into rock and roll.
Right.
And used a style that was scary
mm-hmm.
to white people.
Yeah.
Because his first hit, I think Tutti Frutti, was in 1951.
Something like that, yeah.
He became. He'd had a couple of songs, but they were not hits. That was the first one that hit.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is, all of his songs, "Long Tall Sally," "Good Golly Miss Molly," songs like that, they were sexual.
Oh, very.
And giving into that weird racial stereotype at the time that black men could not control themselves sexually.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing that scared people.
Right. And it's the greatest thing ever. It follows the general trajectory. Like, you can watch where he falls into the blues moving into R&B and then rock and roll. Like, the way that he was doing the piano, standing up and banging on the piano and everything, was being done by people back in the 30s. Charlie Patton and stuff at the house parties. They were called house parties, or they were at the juke joints.
But this is now a visual medium.
Right, and now Little Richard brought that into the visual age, off of the plantations and into living rooms at one point, and then it's like, oh my.
And it was scary to people. He was flamboyant. He wore makeup.
Uh-huh.
He didn't dress. He dressed in. He did. He dressed weird. He was not what anybody would have been comfortable with.
He was an individual. He was an individual, and
from head to toe.
Oh yeah. And one of my favorite quotes from him is that he said, I majored in mouth.
Yeah. And it was always the same.
It was.
It was always the same. But because he was black, and because he was so flamboyant, and because of course he was gay,
mm-hmm.
and because he was flamboyant, and because of all of that, he got overshadowed.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the wake of the rock and roll movement that happened largely because of the appearance of Elvis, never tired of bitching about it.
He was one of the few from that time frame that went out in the press and said, they screwed over black people so
Right.
hard, and they still do.
And he
And
wasn't wrong.
no, he wasn't. And he became penniless because he didn't own his own masters.
Right.
And I think it was Michael Jackson bought the masters and then gave them to him,
Yeah.
and may have bought him an extra 30 years
Yeah.
because he was destitute.
But the problem was that he did it so much and so often that he pushed people away.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, we know you have a grievance.
Right.
We know.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean,
But you understand.
you have to keep talking about it, otherwise they'll forget about it because they don't want to hear about it.
Right.
So he was
And
made to look like he was annoying, constantly talking about it because they didn't want him to be talking about it.
right. But he didn't try to reinvent himself at all. He didn't try to recapture. And he was so contradictory because his life was so complicated. He was gay and then tried to not be gay and then tried to become a minister and then say, I put that life behind me, but which, as we know, you can't do. And it was like, it was just all these contradictions.
Right, right. And he was a minister for a good long time.
Yeah.
He officiated Tom Petty's second wedding
Yeah.
in 2001, and he officiated Little Stevie Van Zant's,
Yeah.
Little Stevens, with Bruce Springsteen as the best man.
Mhm.
Uh,
The whole thing, now I'll tell you this, the whole thing about complaining that he wasn't getting the notoriety, he parodied that beautifully in Down and Out in Beverly Hills. He played the next door neighbor. And he does this whole monologue where one little thing goes wrong with his white neighborhood, with his white neighbors, and like 40 police cars show up. Somebody tries to break in his house. 8 hours later, one little car shows up. That was a really good performance.
Yeah. There was one, I think he did it on a television show. He was playing a different character, but he was basically playing himself. And he goes
Well, I mean, who else could he play?
He was on the stand in a courtroom, and he's like, "Yeah, I invented this, and they stole this, and they stole my woo, and they stole this, and the white man just took it all." And it's like, yes, it's true. It's
But
true.
yeah, he just. I think there was just something inherently in him that was very difficult for people to grasp because he was such a complex guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, he didn't fit into any pre-established molds.
Yeah.
And as we know in white America, that terrifies white America.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, we can't put it into a box and explain it. It's evil.
That he's indicative of what happened with blues R&B singers in the 1950s. You know, Ike Turner, Howlin' Wolf, you know,
Muddy
all
Waters,
these,
all of that.
yeah, all these musicians who couldn't cross over because of the separation, the racial separation,
The segregation, the color line.
the color line.
Because, you know, they call them race records. And they were not sold in white neighborhoods. They weren't played on white radio stations, quote unquote.
You had to have the outlier stations that would play that late at night.
You had to live in a really good spot or have a really good radio and be at a high elevation to be able to pick up some of this stuff if you weren't down in
Kids
the
knew
South.
the spots. They could take their portable radio and drive out to this spot and sit and listen to it. Because I remember there was a DJ named Marty Rosenblatt. He said, I called the radio station, asked them to play Little Richard. And he said, we don't play Little Richard because that's the devil's music. That was the mindset.
Hmm. Well, see,
And
I've
he said,
always,
"That's how I knew it was good."
yeah, I've always been fascinated with the whole "it's the devil's music" thing,
Hmm.
because every generation calls the next generation's music the devil's music.
Hmm.
Um, because it went from parlor music and folk music, and then, oh no, there's jazz, that's the devil's music.
Hmm.
There's blues, oh, that's the devil's music.
It's rock and roll.
Rock and roll is the devil's music. Heavy metal is the devil's music.
Hmm.
The.
Every generation has their satanic panic,
Yeah.
and
Britney Spears is devil music. It's all.
Kiss is the devil's music. Well, look at how they're dressed.
You but only look at how they're dressed. If you listen to them,
To
they
the
are
music, it's not.
not. That is the thing that has always turned me off from Kiss, is that they do not sound how they look. If they sounded
Right.
how they looked, they would be amazing.
Hmm.
But they sound like any old general rock band,
Hmm.
and they look like that. They're not singing songs that they look like they should be singing. And I just,
The way they look, they should sound like Guar.
yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly. And they don't.
they don't. But people do not realize today just exactly how influential he was. I mean, they really, really don't. Everybody points to Elvis, and Elvis was influential in his performing style, but Little Richard really was the one that kind of got the ball rolling with this. And again, bringing all of that he had accumulated from what he heard in church
Hmm.
and in the juke joints, when he was younger, and putting it into um, I won't say something that became mainstream, but something that became influential. Um, so he wasn't wrong in
Right.
complaining about it.
No, he was not.
But anyway, I also want to mention just off to the side, we just heard today that Jerry Stiller died,
Yeah.
age 92.
Uh, all I can say is, Serenity now!
Every time I ever see a TV guide, I'll think of Jerry Stiller.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's all I got.
Yeah. Saddened by
Yeah.
both of these losses. Great, great people, great influencers. Uh,
Mhm.
they will be missed.
Yep.
Thanks for listening. You can find us on the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com, iTunes, and YouTube. Thanks so much, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.